Webflow Designer is a revolutionary tool for web developers, web designers, and total beginners to the web. This tool allows us to visually craft the core building blocks of the web, HTML, CSS, put them together and create beautiful web pages, all without having to write code. So we don't have to write code, but we do have to know how Webflow Designer works. And that's what this video is going to teach you, how to use Webflow Designer. We'll go through every panel, we will look at the features, we'll give explanations, and we'll go over some real use cases so you can see how the features work in real life. First, we'll cover this left panel, the primary buttons here on this left side of the screen. Then we'll go over to the right panels. Then we'll get the top bar in Webflow Designer. And last, we will hit the bottom left links and panels down here. At the end of this video, you'll be a pro in Webflow Designer. We'll have gone through all of the panels and you'll know a lot of its capabilities. You'll be ready to start clicking around and crafting your first Webflow project. Let's start here with the first item on the left sidebar. That's going to be the Add Elements panel. This panel allows you to add HTML elements to the canvas. We have elements like section, div block, link block, text heading, dynamic data from the CMS, image and other media, form block, and pre-made components like navbar and slider. When I click on any one of these elements, it's going to be added to the canvas. I can add many items to the page very quickly using the Elements panel. The Pages panel shows all of the static and CMS template pages of the Webflow project. Use this panel to navigate to the different pages inside the project, access important page settings, and also create new pages. Static pages are up here in white, and CMS template pages are down here in purple. I can create a new static page with this button and go create a new folder with this button. You can craft your own static page URL structure using folders and new pages. We'll talk about CMS collection pages and creating new pages for that in this CMS tab. The gear icon allows access to page settings. We can go and change the page name, title tag, meta description, sitemap indexing, open graph settings, and the custom code for this page's head or body. We can add style tags to write CSS and add script tags to write JavaScript in these code blocks. On CMS template pages, page settings allows you to add dynamic content to title tags, meta descriptions, OG content, and custom code. Think of the Pages panel like the sitemap to our Webflow project. Next is the Navigator panel. This allows us to view all of the HTML elements on a page. Every element, every level of nesting, it's all here in the Navigator. There are some useful identifiers for certain elements in the Navigator tree. For example, this green item is a Webflow component, and this purple item is a Webflow collection list. And elements have unique icons to more easily identify them. If we look down here to the bottom of this UI, we'll see a horizontal list of elements. This is a reflection of what's in Navigator. This is the tree of our HTML. And this is nested in this, which is nested in this, which is nested in this. So clicking on any item in the Navigator or in this bottom bar will select that item in the canvas. The Navigator panel is a very clear way to see the structure of all the HTML on the current page. Next is the Components panel. Here we can create, reuse, and manage components in Webflow. The best way to understand a component is to see it in action. Here on the canvas, I will select this div block that contains my subscriber signup. I will right-click and down here, create component. I'll name it subscriber form. Now I can add this subscriber form anywhere in the project. Let's go to another page. Add this subscriber form and make an edit to it. This edit will be reflected in every instance of this component. So back on the home page, we can see the component is updated here as well. Components are great for recurring elements in your project that always should be synchronized. Use components for recurring sections, nav bars, footers, and unification of page content. Moving on to the variables panel, which will allow you to create, manage, and view CSS variables for your project. Variables are a way to organize and store global values for size, color, and font family. Here you can see a fully developed color variable setup that I can customize based on the styles of my Webflow project. All of this management happens in the variables panel. On the canvas, I will select this header and link the color to a variable, brand primary. I can use this brand primary color anywhere in the project, and if I change the hex value in the variables panel for brand primary, this update will be seen everywhere brand primary is used. So great way to have global changes across your project. The style selector panel shows an overview of all HTML tags and classes added to the CSS style sheet of the project. I can search for a class name that I already know. I can go and hover over a class and it will show all of the CSS properties that are applied to the class. Clicking on this list button will show me how this class is used throughout the project. Clean up unused styles is a great way to allow mass removal of unused classes and unused styles inside the project. The assets panel is where I can upload and access images for the project. I can upload any image and use it inside Webflow. Clicking on this button, I can expand the assets panel to a larger view with more organization options. Using an image is as simple as adding an image to the canvas, selecting the placeholder image, and opening the assets panel and clicking the image you want to use. The next panel is the CMS panel. This is an important one. Webflow CMS is a powerful system to store your website's content and generate new page templates. So this panel is going to show us all the CMS collections that we have in this project. Let's create our first collection. We'll create a collection called blog. We'll call this title, and I'll add a rich text custom field for the body of this post. Creating this collection automatically adds a new CMS template page in the Pages panel. This is where I would create the blog template page. Back to the collections, let's go and look at this collection we just created and now create an item in that collection. This would be a new blog post. Creating a new item here in the CMS panel is going to create a new web page inside the blog template. So as many items as I create here, I will have that many template pages with the blog template that's set up. So here on the template page, I can go click on this text, bind it to the title that we set in the CMS collection, and then go ahead and bind this rich text to the rich text in the collection. This is how we can take Webflow CMS content and show it on our website. Here in the logic panel, I can create a workflow that will add additional logic on top of what we can do with HTML and CSS. So this logic will allow us to, for example, send webhooks or go and post differently after a form submission. There's a lot of things we can do here. And as we're playing around with this, if we can't find what we're looking for, if we need to get to the next step in creating logic, in creating web applications for Webflow, we can go ahead and try Wizzed. Check out Wizzed for building to that next level in Webflow and taking logic to the next step. Moving on to membership. An important note about membership before we get started: do not enable membership on your website unless you know that you'll absolutely use this feature. This feature permanently adds new collections, pages, and settings to your project, which you don't want unless you actually need it. So let's continue. I'll enable it on this site, and we can see in the users panel, I can add new users by email and assign the users to an access group. In access groups, I can choose some configuration options like gating content of certain pages on the website. Okay, moving on to e-commerce. Again, same disclaimer. Don't enable e-commerce unless you will absolutely use this feature. It adds collections, pages, and settings, which you cannot remove. So make sure you're using it. And for this demo, let's do this. Create new products, categories, and discounts. And you can also view your orders and subscriptions made through this website. Webflow's e-commerce is certainly simple. So if you're interested in using it, I recommend creating a new product and setting up a quick prototype of your store. Make sure Webflow e-commerce fits your needs with a demo. Moving on to the apps panel, I can search for and install apps right here in the Webflow marketplace. Let's install Finsweet table to the project, because installing an app gives us access to that app inside Designer, and it's going to allow us to create new things in Webflow that are not possible natively. So we go out to third-party creators and get those new features that will allow us to do more. In the example of Finsweet table, table elements are unsupported natively inside Webflow. So this app is going to allow me to create a table component visually inside Webflow Designer. And it's a great way to go and add that table to the page or add any functionality to the page that is not native in Webflow. So the next one here on this top bar, it's technically not part of Webflow, but I'm going to cover it in this video. Finsweet Extension is a Webflow Designer workflow tool, and it's developed by Finsweet to help improve the experience while building in Webflow. You can download Finsweet Extension in the Chrome Web Store, and you can do a lot with Finsweet Extension. It is the most popular and most downloaded extension in the entire Webflow ecosystem. It allows us to better manage breakpoints, reorder color swatches, and access site settings custom code right inside Designer. Very useful workflow improvements for anybody building in Webflow. Finsweet Extension is certainly not required for Webflow development, but it's the most used Webflow extension for a reason. It's really going to help you with your workflow. So now we are done with this left primary panel. We're now going to move to the right side of Webflow Designer. And we're going to start with the Styles panel. The Styles panel is where elements go from boring to fabulous. It's the place where we transform the entire web page. It's where we write CSS declarations or styles to the project. Every action in this panel is making a change to the CSS style sheet of the published project. So when I click on an element and go give it a class and apply styles to that class, Webflow is now writing those styles to the CSS of the project. Webflow has a great foundation of native CSS properties here in the Styles panel. We have a lot to work with. Display, padding, margin, sizes, position, typography, transform, backgrounds, borders. There is a lot to work with here. When a CSS property is not natively available, we can go and add it here in the custom property section. This is a key benefit of Webflow. It's the love, the soul, the passion, the heart of Webflow, being able to apply these styles visually here on the page. And this is one of the reasons why Webflow is so great. Moving on to the settings panel, this is going to apply settings to elements. And the content of this panel changes based on which element is selected. So if I'm clicking around on the canvas, the settings are going to change for each of these elements. So it's applying the setting to the element. Many settings configured in this panel will apply an attribute to the element in HTML. For example, setting an ID in this field for this div block is going to set an attribute ID equals my image on this element. And we can also go and apply custom attributes right here at the end of the settings panel. So this is going to happen for most of the settings we use, but not all of them. For example, we can go and apply CMS bindings here inside the settings panel. Watch as I go and click on this element, and I can now bind it to dynamic data from the CMS. I can configure a lot of dynamic content through this settings panel. You can find a lot of different settings here, and as you click through and find different elements, you will explore new settings all the time. So that's it for the settings panel. Let's go to the next and final panel here on the right side, the interactions panel. The interactions panel can create complex animations for our elements through an in-depth feature set. With this component selected, I'll create a new page trigger interaction and select page load. When this page finishes loading, I'll start an animation and create a new timed animation. I'll go create a new action and select transform move. Let's do 24 pixels Y down. Let's set it as an initial state, and this will set the component 24 pixels down initially before the page loads. To the same initial state, I'll add another action for opacity and set opacity to 0%. Now, when the site loads, the transform will move back to that original position of 0 pixels. And an action for opacity will go to 100% opacity. So if we play this animation, we'll see that we create a simple fade in and fade up effect on load. This is a simple example of Webflow interactions. This panel can have hundreds of interactions, and those interactions can be very complex with hundreds of actions and steps. There's definitely a learning curve when we are using Webflow interactions, regardless of your experience with the web. Once you learn it, animation options in Webflow interactions become endless. Now let's move to the top bar of Webflow Designer. This Webflow logo has a drop-down with some useful links. We'll cover a few of the most important ones. Site settings is always an important part of the project. Site settings is outside of the project, inside the Webflow dashboard view. There are a lot of important options here in site settings. We're only going to review the custom code tab here. These code blocks will inject style tags or script tags into every page of the project. So if we have a global script that we want added to every page of the project, like Google Analytics, we would go and add it here in site settings. A lot more to explore in site settings, but let's get back to Webflow Designer and continue with this dropdown. We'll also find a quick find option that allows us to search for anything in the Webflow project. Once you're comfortable with Webflow, quick find is a great workflow tool. Let's now move on to this set of buttons here in the center. They are responsible for setting screen size and making responsive CSS styles to the page. So you can set styles for a specific breakpoint by selecting that breakpoint and then making updates in the style panel. By setting a style on the div block, when the mobile breakpoint is selected, I am writing CSS styles to the style sheet for the mobile screen size. For example, this layout here is 3 columns on desktop, 2 columns on tablet, and 1 column on mobile. The value of the column property changes as the responsive level changes. This is how building in Webflow for mobile devices is seamless. It's a great process. It's important to understand that styles go down. Styles do not go up. So what we have created here on the base breakpoint or desktop breakpoint will cascade down to the lower breakpoints. Tablet will get the styles from desktop, and mobile will get the styles from tablet and desktop. So as I make a change on a higher breakpoint, it works for the lower, but as I make a change on the lower breakpoint, the higher breakpoint does not get those changes. So with this simple workflow in mind, we can be making completely mobile responsive, mobile friendly websites inside Webflow. This button allows you to add higher breakpoints to the project. When you do this, styles cascade up from the default breakpoint. It now changes from going down to styles going up. Higher breakpoints, I recommend only add these higher breakpoints if you absolutely need them with the project. For most projects, we're building everything with the base breakpoint, and that's it. Moving over to the top right of this top bar, we have the designing dropdown that shows different permission roles for the project. Designing allows you to make all the changes that you want in the project. You can delete things, you can add new elements, you can do pretty much anything inside Designer. Editing only allows us to edit the text or links or the CMS. This is really useful for teams so that a designer and an editor can work together, or just to create a safe space for edits by being friendly to edits and just being in edit mode and not accidentally deleting something inside the project. This icon shows the save status of a project. Webflow Designer is constantly saving your work. So the green check means that you have a current configuration in Webflow Designer, and that configuration is synced with Webflow systems. It doesn't go green because it's saving it, and then green means we're saved. This icon allows us to see a code preview for our project. Look at the preview generated for our demo here. I can go and export this code as a zip file. This opens the comments panel. We can leave comments in Webflow, which is useful when working with teams. The triangle icon is the preview button, and it's used for quickly previewing your site instead of publishing it. Preview makes native elements like sliders, tabs, and Webflow interactions work, so it's a great way to quickly check your site without having to go and publish it. The downside to preview is that you cannot see custom CSS and custom JavaScript that's added to the custom code blocks. So in order to see that custom CSS, custom JavaScript, anything in the custom code block, you have to go and publish the project and view the publish page. And that brings us right to the publish button. We can publish the project on our webflow.io domain name at any time during the project build. During our development, it's going to be very common for us to go and publish our work to webflow.io to view it. Why? Because we want to view that custom JavaScript. We want to view that custom CSS. And in order to do that, in order to get a full view of what our site would look like on the web, we have to publish, and then we have to go and view on that webflow.io link. So preview is for light testing, webflow.io publish is for deeper testing. And after the project is published to staging, we can go and click this button to view that publish page. And when we're ready, we can publish this page to production. And on to the last section of Webflow Designer UI, we have the settings panel here, which has some useful features like creating a backup. Webflow is automatically taking backups as we are working, but if we want a manual backup, right here in settings. The help panel gives us access to the keyboard shortcuts. As you learn these, as you become more comfortable in Webflow and you learn the shortcuts, building in Webflow becomes fast, much faster. You can do things really quickly, and it's a really, really great experience. So when you get more used to it, check out those shortcuts. Audits gives us an accessibility report of the current page. It flags missing alt text, non-descriptive link content, skipped heading levels, and duplicate element IDs. It'll give you that report and show you how to fix it. Down here, we have the quick find feature again, and we can access this with Control E or Command E. Great way to quickly get that quick find up and search for what we're looking for. We have a full list of tutorials here, but this is just a short list. If you're looking for more education on Webflow Designer, go check out Webflow University. It's packed with videos on how to use this tool. We have covered the entire Designer UI in this video. We really hit a lot. You should have a good understanding of everything that's possible in Webflow, the capabilities, the limitations, and how to get started. If you like this video, give it a like, share it with a friend, watch it again to be more comfortable with how this Designer UI works. Once you understand it, once you get past that learning curve, Webflow is going to be an amazing tool for you. If you want more Webflow content, subscribe to our channel. We are posting new content weekly for Webflow professionals of all levels. Thank you so much. Enjoy Webflow, and this is just the start to your Webflow journey.